Why me? Why do I have to be unusual in the first place? And then on top of that, I get something even more unusual. What did I ever do to deserve this? And then, you kind of say, well, maybe this is it for me. And there are moments when you really start to think about, how bad off am I? How bad is this going to get?
So now I do want to shift a little bit over to talking about, I know you experienced relapses, but these are like recurrences really, in terms of this ongoing
Right.
experience that you've had to go through. You then did finally get the word, okay, this is the first official point of relapse number one. It's 2005. That means we need second line treatment. And this time you described it was FCR.
Yeah. At that time, FCR was found to be effective, and I knew it would be more toxic in terms of side effects. So they put me on antivirals and all that other stuff that goes along with that to minimize the side effects. And even at that time, the Rituxan was fairly new. And so I questioned the doctor, and I questioned our patient community of what they knew about it and how well it worked and whether it was dangerous long term. In hindsight, that was a dumb question to ask, but who knew back then?
But I do want to ask though, you say dumb question, but in that moment, I actually wanted to ask you more about this. It's like when something is new, right? So it's just been approved or whatever, there isn't a ton of data in terms of the real world experience with more patients on a treatment. There are going to be so many questions. And I would say none of them is a dumb question because everyone's trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I've always going through that process of looking at what's out there. I have I'm able to access some medical journals because I work at a university, so I can look at, I follow what's happening in my disease and related diseases. So I'm always looking at the research results of newer novel agents in related diseases like CLL or WM or multiple myeloma or other diseases like that, just to keep track of what's up and coming and see what are the side effects. With any novel agent, like for Waldenstrom's, the newer ones are the BTK inhibitors. And so I read up on, what is the side effects of BTK inhibitors. Now, granted, when it's first comes out, you don't have a long period of time to figure out what's the long-term effect. You don't know. And like a couple of the noted experts would always tell me is there is no, at least right now, there is no safe treatment. He said, in fact, the best treatment is no treatment at all if you don't need treatment. But every treatment has some side effects. So you basically comes down to pick your poison. And it's also very expensive, which is another thing now that we have to consider, which is very frustrating, at least in the United States, the fact that financial toxicity is becoming such a big issue.
I know FCR is already outdated but at the time it was already, this is 2005. You said there were rumblings that this might not be the right thing, but from January to July of 2005, you were on FCR. It was good enough response where they said, okay, cool. Now we can get off of that. And you were in remission, or you were not in remission. You had a response, right? If that's the terminology, you had a response.
Right from the start, I like to chart my own blood values. So I would, be able to see month to month how it was trending. And it was exciting to see it actually going in the right direction. And I was starting to get very, I can't say I didn't think about it, but I could start focusing more on other things. I actually enrolled in grad school and thought I'd, work on a PhD, and I did coursework in that, and I thought, well, this is good. I'm going to be able to, every so often I'll get a treatment. It's not that bad, and then I'll need another treatment, and I'll be okay. And so I kind of went into a sense, sort of a sense of security, in a sense, maybe a false sense of security, but knowing that I was doing better, I felt better, made a big difference compared to where I was before I started getting treated. That was, kind of the way I was looking at it.
So what I'm hearing is that it was a gradual sort of, okay, I can breathe a little now. And now with
Yeah.
more numbers trending in the right direction, it was more like, okay. So it was gradual. And at some point, then you were able to focus more on the day to day and less so on oh, I have another test coming up, blood test coming up, right?
Right.
What are the numbers going to be? Then you did feel things. It was 2009. You were preparing for this trip to Italy. It was this great thing you were looking forward to. Your body was already starting to tell you things, right?
Right. Yeah.
Can
I
you
did
describe
notice
that?
I was starting to get a little bit more tired, a little bit more fatigued, but and I saw the number. I was watching the chart and I would show it to the doctor and he would kind of smirk a little bit, but then he would look at it. So he would say, yeah, you're right. It is going up, but it's not too bad yet. And you don't seem to have severe symptoms. So go enjoy yourself, have a good time. Because, he, just as much as I do, he knew the quality of life was important. And he said, go. And then when you come back, we'll talk about your options. And so we did go, did a month vacation there to be with relatives and do all the tourist stuff in Italy, and had a great time. But towards the end, I was sleeping longer, and I started to get a cough that wouldn't go away. And I knew something was wrong. The trip back was not fun.
Yeah, yeah. You're at this point sleeping basically all the time.
Yeah.
You know something's wrong. So you finally, it's not a surprise when your doctor's like, all right, it's time to go back and figure out
Yes.
your third line of treatment.
Right.
Anything notable about that conversation and any shift?
Yeah, it was that relapse was pretty serious for me. That was I had a lot of things going wrong. It was unusual, of course. It's unusual that I have a rare disease at a young age compared to other people. But on top of that, I had other complications that kind of go with that disease at times in certain patients. So I had hemolytic anemia. So basically, my red blood cells would just be chewed away, and I couldn't replace them unless I got a transfusion. So I became transfusion dependent for I don't know how many blood transfusions I had, maybe 16 of them over a period of 3 or 4 months. And I had cold agglutinin disease and cryoglobulinemia, which means, to add insult to injury, they had to warm the blood up in order for me to get the transfusion so that it wouldn't clot. It was an interesting experience because the blood warming machine, they hadn't used it in years. So the nurses were kind of saying, well, how does this work? Do you know? I don't know. It's
I love that you're pointing this out. It's another instance of true, like you were educated on what this meant. It wasn't just some word in your chart or something it was, I know what this means. And so you were able to relay it to nurses who, again, this is so rare. They wouldn't maybe know this on a day-to-day
right.
basis. So it's so important.
Right. And to kind of go with that is like, don't be afraid that they're going to think that you're trying to tell them what to do. Don't worry about that at all. Just tell them, even if they give you a nasty look, it's still, you got the message across, they heard it, and they say, yeah, I know. That's fine. Great. I'm glad you know. Take care of it. And you're much better off than if you didn't say anything at all and it got messed up and they had to poke you again 3-4 times just to get your blood draw. To kind of compound things a little more, I started to have severe lower back pain, and we weren't sure what was causing that. And ran through, did an MRI, and really couldn't tell too much from that. And it became so bad that what we found was that, based on PET scan and further testing, was that I had tumor at the base of the spine. We were able to biopsy it and found that it was lymphoplasmacytic lymphoma, which is Waldenstrom's. It was a Waldenstrom's tumor. So what we found was that the way to treat that, we didn't know. And basically, every time I go in, it seemed like every time I went to the doctor, they would all be there would be that team of doctors and med students all scratching their heads saying, huh, this is an interesting case. Thank you. I feel so good about that. So my doctor, he admitted, he said, look, I have not experienced this before. So he said, we're going to try and figure this out. Here's what I think we should do. And he said, I want to collect your stem cells, but first just in case, but first I want to knock your disease down with some heavy duty stuff to get your immune system at least at a certain baseline. So he suggested high dose Cytoxin. I would lose my hair, which normally in Waldenstrom's that doesn't happen. But I did go through that. And we'll do some dexamethasone to go along with that, some Rituxan, and do radiation to the tumors. And I said, well, I think that makes sense, but I want a second opinion. I want to confer with because I was involved with the IWMF at the time. And at the time I was so weak and I knew that I had a feeling that there was no way I could withstand a stem cell transplant. It was not the right thing for me at the time. And he said, but the treatment plan that you have for high dose Cytoxin and dexamethasone and radiation is a good treatment plan. It can work. So we went with that. And my doctor said, you pick, which one do you want? And that's where
choose your adventure. Yay.
Yeah, exactly. And he said, you made a good choice. I would have gone with that too. That's the part of it where it kind of hits home that it's part art and part science, where there's no clear definition of what is going to work and what isn't, especially for many cancers. That people don't realize that they're making gut level decisions based on what they know, and at that point in time, and they're never certain if it's the right decision or not. I've told other Waldenstrom's patients that if you see one Waldenstrom's patient, you've seen one Waldenstrom's patient, because we're all different. We have the same disease, but our bodies behave differently. We have different genetic aspects of our disease. We just belong to the same family in a sense, but we're all different.
The details might be different, but in this case, for you, you're already a rare cancer patient, if you will. And then on top of it, you're a unique, interesting or unusual case.
At first what goes through your mind is, well, why me? Why is it, why do I have to be unusual in the first place? And then on top of that, I get something even more unusual. What did I ever do to deserve this? And then, you kind of say, well, maybe this is it for me. And there are moments when you really start to think about, how bad off am I? How bad is this going to get? Because they don't know what's going on, and I don't know what's going on, and we don't know how to treat it. And, you get to a low point and you say, okay, I'm going to cry it out. And you do that, and then I'm going to move on and see what we can do. And if it works, at a certain point, you kind of reach that realization that it's either going to work or it's not. And you have to get a level of comfort with, and of course, hope for the best and say that I'm not ready to go anywhere, but if it doesn't work, I gave it my best shot.
The good news here is that it was like, I don't know, we think we're going to do this. We hope that it's going to work. It's an unusual case, but it was good, right? There was a good response. Can you share more about that?
Yeah, it was a several month process of going through treatment and going through radiation, and I got a very good response from it. I even had surgery to remove part of the tumor. And it got to a point where somewhere around 2015, 5 years out, my doctor said, we can maybe start saying the C word for cure, because this is really strange, really unusual. Well, he shouldn't have said that, but anyhow, to go along with that treatment though, what happened was, because of the tumor, my right foot and right leg, I have neuropathy in it. And I went through a process of not only, having to deal with being weak, but I was so weak that I was in a wheelchair. Then I went to a walker, and then to a walking stick. And I tried to keep working the whole time, full time, because I was the main breadwinner for my family. And I took public transportation. So my wife would drive me to the bus stop. I would haul the wheelchair. She would haul the wheelchair out, wheel me to the bus. I would get on the bus and then get off and do whatever. And it was, yeah, that was very difficult. I would have to, like, you know, I couldn't even go into the shower or anything on my own. My wife would have to help me and wash me initially, that was very demoralizing. Okay, not because I've never been in that kind of situation, and it was, you know, you reach a low point at that time when you say, well, geez, I've done everything. I'm trying to do the best for my family, and here I am. I can't even take care of myself. How am I supposed to be able to take care of them? And how long is this going to last? My goodness, day after day, I have to do this. When is it going to get better? And all those thoughts get running through your head. At the time, that's basically was my mindset was, okay, this is not good. I know it's not good. And if I have to cry, I'll cry, but I have to move on. I have to keep going. I have to find a way to figure out, can I swing my leg over the tub? One little thing at least. Can I dry one part of my body on my own? Can I try little things and keep working at it and find positive things to do rather than dwelling on what I can't do? Yeah, it was difficult because you know, with our, you know, family dynamics or whatever, was that I was, you know, it was my salary basically that supported the family, and my wife worked also, but you know, there was a disparity there in the salary, let's say. So to not have me earning money was a consideration. It was serious consideration because, you know, initially, you know, even my employers or my manager, very understanding and everything, very supportive, but said, look, do you want to take, do you want to go on leave? Do you want to go on disability leave? And I said, oh, I hadn't thought of that. And then when I looked into it, I saw, oh, well, yeah, but that's 60% of your salary. And I don't know if I can afford that. And so I didn't do that. There was no way around that because we have bills to pay. I can't get around that. Maybe that also helped me recover, was that, oh, I gotta support my family. I have to get better. I have no choice.
So how did you, and I also want to highlight too, because you are not just a patient at this point, you've been a patient advocate, you're researching, you know, more than the average person going through treatment. So you knew to ask about certain things like BTK inhibitors. Can you talk about sort of that path from, okay, I need to go to to see a specialist neurologist, into talking about the BTK inhibitors?
Right. Yeah. I did notice that I was getting more numbness and more tingling. And so I knew something was going on, that, you know, possibly that little tumor was getting larger. So fortunately at the time, there was some research being done that showed that the new BTK inhibitors, like ibrutinib, had a good response rate on people who had tumors, let's say, what they call extranodal tumors or extramedullary tumors. That's what it is. So we decided to go with that, and kind of conferred with the doctor and checked with a couple of specialists out there and said, yeah, let's give it a shot. It can't hurt. And incidentally, about 2 months ago, I switched to a different BTK inhibitor because I read that it had better response rate among people with extramedullary tumors. So I thought, well, let's switch. You know, it's not going to hurt me. So I'd rather kind of go for what's best at this point in time. And I won't know until October, my next PET scan. So I get it every couple of years, what kind of effect, if any, that it may have on my LPL tumor that's still there.
You know, this is an ongoing situation. You know, this is your life that you're living with cancer. Mm-hmm. And you've been doing it, you know, for 20 years. Right. I mean, that's incredible. And so, yeah, what's your message for folks on that?
Be educated, stay educated, communicate with your disease community, get a good support system. I know some people are single or whatever and don't have a significant other to help them, but find somebody that can help you, especially if you're going to doctor's appointments. Have somebody there with you, because when you're in shock with what's going on, you mishear things, and it's vital that you get someone else sitting there with you. And then also, there are going to be good periods and bad periods, and kind of resign yourself to that, and find what things that help you get through bad periods, whether it's yoga, deep breathing exercises, going for walks, short walks, whatever makes you feel good. Find the joy in little things. It's important to improve your quality of life. You may still be, I hate to be a downer, but you may still be in such a situation that's very serious, and you may not come out in a good position, but it's the quality of life, not necessarily the quantity, that's important. So trying to do whatever you can to improve your quality of life is very important. And then one other piece of advice is, when you go into the hospital or whatever, be your own advocate. If they want to give you something, say, why are you giving me that? Be educated and be positive.